Sudan's uprising was caused by the high cost of bread. Now it's morphed into a demand for democracy. Thousands of activists are staging a sit-in in front of the army's headquarters in the capital, Khartoum, and they have a lot to worry about. The military has stacked a transitional council with its own officers and then dismissed a draft constitution written by civilian opposition leaders. Instead, the army wrote its own. One protester expressed exasperation, saying the army doesn't realize its job is not to assume power, but to hand it over. The sentiment that is echoed by the African Union and the United Nations as well, which have both called military rule unacceptable. But is that support enough? Because Omar al Bashir might be under house arrest, but there's still a big question mark about the future of Sudan's revolution. Well, let's jump straight into our debate with our guests. Joining me now from Khartoum is Rabie Abdul Atti Obeid. He was a senior official with Sudan's National Congress Party, which was ousted in the protests. Khalid Omer Yousif is the Secretary General of the Sudanese opposition Sudanese Congress Party. And Hamid Murtada is a protester who was jailed last month. Gentlemen, good to have you on the program. Khalid Omer Yousif, let me start with you. Do you trust this transitional military council?
Actually, the transitional council did all the wrong things during the last weeks. We offered the army a partnership for transition. We said that the future of Sudan can be built by the cooperation of the civil society, the political parties, the professionals, and the army. And this shared project will meet the aspiration of the Sudanese people. But since then, unfortunately, this military council started to go the way for replacing a dictator by another dictator. And that's why the sit-in, all kinds of resistance is still taking place all around the country, because the demand of people is very clear. The transition for a democracy, peace, justice through civilian authorities that represented the powers and the aspiration of the revolutionary people all around Sudan.
Okay, so Hamid, is this what they call the deep state? Are we seeing the deep state trying to make sure that they don't lose the levers of power?
Indeed, it is the deep state trying to keep the power, and the military is to some very high extent part of the previous regime, and many of the officials now in the military council were engaged in a lot of the crimes committed by the previous regime. So indeed, it's the interest to keep the previous regime for as long as they can, and that's why they cannot be trusted. And as Mr. Khalid just said, they have been doing all the wrong things and not being honest in the promises that they made that they will transfer power to civilians. And it has been a month of the sit-in in front of the army headquarters, and they haven't delivered their promises.
Rabie Abdul Atti, I guess from the outside, looking at your position and looking at the fact that your government lost power in a revolution, I would presume that you're not very happy with the way things are going.
Yes, actually, I am not now speaking on behalf of National Congress Party, as National Congress Party now has no existence in the political scene. And according to the statement and the declaration of the Transitional Military Council, that National Congress Party will have no role and they will have no function in this interim period. Now, I'm speaking as an analyst only, political analyst, and also speaking as a media specialist. I think that, and I hope that this transitional military council will reach to an agreement with this group of freedom and change and with all political functions, so that we will reach to stability and also to prepare properly for the election which will be carried out after 2 years according to the view of the Transitional Military Council.
Rabie, I'm looking forward to getting your answer to this question. A lot of the protesters believed that for too long, for many decades, Omar al Bashir kept all the power to himself and his inner circle, his cronies, of which you would be considered a part. You were corrupt, you were dictatorial, you were undemocratic. Is that accurate?
Yes, actually, for me as a person and as a member in National Congress Party before, Even in the year 2015, I didn't cast my vote for Omar al Bashir, and I was against Omar al Bashir to be as a president of Sudan for more than 30 years. And this is actually my view and my opinion already published in the local newspapers. But actually, we were struggling. I believe that. I believe that, and I agree with you that Omar al Bashir was ruling the country for more than 30 years, and this is not legal and not something which will be acceptable by the Sudanese people.
What sort of advice would you give to someone like Khalid? What should Khalid and his party do?
Yes, I think that we hope that because now we are in a vacuum, constitutional vacuum, and I don't think that this vacuum will be good for the stability in our country. I hope that all the political factions and all political parties, including this Sudanese Congress Party, they should sit together and to have one accord so that we can form a government from technocrats and to prepare and to arrange for the interim period properly so that the election will be a transparent election, and after that, a civilian government will come, and this actually will represent the democratic transformation which we require.
Okay, so Khalid, we have Rabie Abdul Atti, who knows the system because he was within the system for a long time, suggesting that the opposition needs to be more unified here. It would be in your best interests. Would you agree with that?
The unity defeat the former regime, the unity of the opposition on the streets since the signature of Declaration of Freedom and Change succeed to face the brutality of Bashir regime. And the unity is the key for the future. We know that very much, and we know as well that to unite the people of Sudan, this will be, you have to keep the balance between the unity and diversity. Sudan is a very diverse country. Every voice should be heard. Every opinion should be taken into consideration. And we should not exclude anyone that part of the change process, because the revolution is not only belong to the political parties or the professionals. There are youth, women, and there are people who are participating in a courageous way to get rid of the former regime. So, of course, for the future, we have to keep the unity. We have to develop this unity in a way to make anyone in Sudan find himself in political bodies that really representing them.
Okay, so Hamid, given that we've seen the military, the Transitional Council, play their hand a little bit over the past couple of weeks, how much do you fear that we're going to see a Sudanese Sisi emerge and a similar situation to Egypt of a few years ago?
Indeed, this is what we have been seeing for the past few weeks, and the name matching of Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Abdel Fattah Burhan is not a coincidence, I guess. So yes, this is pretty much a possible scenario, and this is why we are still at the sit-in, and this is why we are still determined to be out there, to take it up further, to escalate to the highest levels, because this is the scenario that we do not want to happen. But we do think that it's a very possible scenario, and the regime is trying to reproduce itself by having this military phase, and which would be could be a very similar scenario to the Egyptian scenario, although the circumstances in Sudan are quite different. But yeah, the reason why we are still out there in the streets and still determined to keep the sitting going is that we do not want any reproduction or recycling of the previous corrupt regime.
Rabie Abdul Atti, this previous corrupt regime that you worked for, is it easy to dismantle, or is it still lurking about in the system?
Yes, actually, when we want to say that to dismantle a political party, this is actually it is not possible to dismantle a political party, because we have already lived a trial since the revolution in 1964, when the regime at that time tried to dismantle the Communist Party. The Communist Party came again, and whenever also we tried to, in the year 1986, also to dismantle some political parties, also again a coup happened. We want to learn from our actually lessons. That lesson in 1964 during October Revolution, and also the lesson in the year 1985. But we don't want to repeat ourselves and to actually to be far away from that that experiment and that trial in the two decades, two times. We don't want to govern our country by a coup and by a civil, and we want to leave this actually wicked circle, wicked cycle. And I think that all political parties should learn from the political history of our country.
Khalid, learn from the political history. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and dismantle everything. Do you agree with that?
First one who should learn from the history is Rabie and his people. They destroyed the country. They had a very evil ideology and ideas that's really divide the people of Sudan, that in the name of Islam, they had genocide in Sudan. They divide the country for two countries. They destroy the productive sector in Sudan, and now the mission to build the future is very difficult. So learning from the history mean that not repeat the history, mean that to be honest about who was the criminal, who harmed this country, and who should be accountable for all this destruction. We have no intention to repeat the mistakes of the past. Our project, our aspiration for Sudan, our dream for Sudan is a Sudan that's really inclusive, that Sudan that for all its people. Mm-hmm. So to have an inclusive Sudan, we have to stand very strongly against any kind of exclusive ideology or ideas, and the Islamists in Sudan were the source of the most criminal ideology that destroyed the country in Sudan.
Rabie, very strong words from Khalid there.
I don't want to defend, actually, to say that this is criminal, and to say, because I am not a judge. I think that if there is any responsible or any minister or any member in the National Congress Party who has any corruption, this is actually should be a subject for law, and for, because we have a judicial system which is actually a system to settle such problems, who is corrupt and who is not corrupt. We are speaking now about the corruption. We want to remove corruption, whether this corruption is from any political party, whether communists or whether even the Sudanese Congress political party, or any other citizen who committed a mistake or committed any corruption in our country. Because I don't want to make myself as a judge to see to say this is this man is corrupted, and
but worth noting that,
because I think that there is nothing called impunity.
Okay.
No,
but worth noting that one man and one party, certainly, one man and one party ran the country for 30 years, though. So it's difficult to say, well, everybody did it. Hamid, final word to you. Final word to you. We're running out of time. Briefly, please wrap us up, Hamid Murtada.
So yeah, the city is continuing, and the Sudan's uprising is continuing. We are ready to take it to all the highest level. We are getting prepared for civil disobedience. All what we want is for the military council to hand power to a civilian government with a civilian council with a limited representation of military officials that would govern the country through the 4 years transitional period and then we can have an election and finally have the country of our dreams that we have been dreaming of for the past 30 years.
Gentlemen, it's been a very important conversation to have. I thank you very much for joining us. Rabie, Khalid and Hamid, thanks again for joining us.